Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz Young, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Hi, welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we break down skills, stories, and systems to help you thrive in the digital age. Today's episode is all about voice first and conversational AI are transforming the way that we interact with information, access support, and design more inclusive digital experiences. And I've got the perfect guest to dive into this with me. Caroline Laurenson is a trailblazer in the voice first tech and the founder of TL Tech Smart Home Solutions, an award-winning company helping people live more independently through smart home innovation. She's also the creator of Create Your Kind Space, a community-driven platform that empowers people to use technology in a way that feels human, supportive, and kind. Caroline's work sits at the intersection of technology and care, showing us what's possible when we design with empathy, inclusivity, and creativity. From supporting older adults with smart home routines to crafting voice-based wellbeing tools, she's on a mission to make technology feel less robotic and more like a trusted companion. In this episode, we explore how conversational AI and language-based tools are revolutionizing everything from health and well-being to daily living and emotional support. Whether you're a tech lover, a business owner, or someone curious about the future of digital interaction, this one is going to open up your mind. So plug in, power up, and get ready because this conversation is about to change the way that you hear technology. So welcome, Caroline. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Sooz. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you.
It's always strange when we hear our own bios back in that way from someone else. So what I'd like to start off with is for you to kind of tell us a little bit about you, how you've got to where you are today from your own words. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Caroline.
Awesome. I have a very unusual background. So I'm actually a chemical engineer. Worked in the oil industry for a good few decades, and then went on this. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but I got to a point where I was like, "What am I doing? Like, why? How have I got here?" I really started to question all of that. And decided to quit my full-time job. And me and my husband set up this business together. So he was also going through some difficult times. He got made redundant from his job in the energy industry. He's an electronic and electrical engineer. He loves to tinker. He loves to do lots of things around the house. Honestly, if you see my house, I'm looking at my desk just now because there's just half finished projects everywhere. But I could really see the potential. I could see how much that these technologies and the smart home automations could really help. So yeah, we created this business where we help put tech in people's houses. We have a really strong emphasis on, finding out about someone's lifestyle, finding out about their hobbies, what are the things that they would love to be able to still do independently, and then we try and create solutions around that. A lot of the times it's working with families as well to see how can we use the technology so that they feel more connected and able to support their loved ones as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a random pivot, but actually a lot of the things that I did as an engineer, I'm finding those skills are transferable, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to be more creative, to really feel like I'm giving something back as well. And that was the thing that was most important to me when I was evaluating what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So our business is evolved as well as time has gone on. So pre-pandemic, we go to people's houses, and then during lockdown, we could not do that. So my husband would have been quite happy to sit and watch Netflix, but I was like, we need to see if there's something we can do. Like, can we do something remotely? So how can we take what we would do in someone's home and do that remotely. So we started going on Facebook, doing little tutorials. We focused on the Amazon Alexa smart speakers because they're a really good way of doing like calls and video calls. And then that evolved into this whole journey of realizing that there's so much that those devices can do. And we decided to make our own software for the Alexas, initially focusing on the things that we were all experiencing. So the loneliness, the lack of routine, the anxiety over, our health and all of those things. So we created this thing called Kind Space. And Kind Space is, on the face of it, very simple. It checks in with you. It gives you tips and advice and signposting. It has some little activities in there like journaling. So just things that help you to be a bit more mindful. And then things have expanded. So we now make software for other companies as well, still in the wellbeing space, which is lovely. I have written a book about how people can get the best out of their Alexa smart speakers, and somehow landed myself the job of hosting the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit in Edinburgh, which we just held last week. So it's been quite a journey.
Wow. To go through a process of chemical engineering all the way through now into hosting the chatbot, the European chatbot event in Edinburgh is just an incredible journey. Thank you for sharing that. It's always nice to hear it from the individual's point of view, because there's so much more to it than just what is visible online through the platform. So let's talk a little bit about the changeover from going to people's houses and helping them with their tech, what that journey was like, to now what you're doing to be able to support them in their house. Can you share a little bit more about that, Caroline?
Yeah, I think for me what's most powerful is that we're all about building relationships. We're all about really, making that connection and finding out what matters most to that person. And I think that's given us a really deep insight into, how to communicate, how to simplify things. And so I think we try to bring that into everything that we do on the digital side as well. And we have a really deep empathy for what people are going through when they're in that situation. We still have lots of lovely customers. We work with a housing association, so we have a lot of variety, when it comes to the sorts of people that we work with. When we made the move into digital, I guess what I didn't fully appreciate is actually how much potential there is there then to help more people. So we're in the far northeast of Scotland, and generally, we can cover wider in Scotland, but it's a lot of traveling. We have a lot of houses up in the Highlands as well, but there's a limit to what we can do, both physically in terms of traveling, but also our own time as well. So the digital side, I think, is lovely because it has opened up that opportunity to help more people. And the book is a really good example of that. And it's funny that it took me so long to write it, because I literally only published it pretty much this time last year. And I was actually on a journey or my original plan was I wanted to create a journal, and this journal would be something that would go along with the Kind Space audio experience, because I wanted something that was really nice and tactile, because physically writing, there's a lot of cognitive benefits and well-being health benefits to that. So in my usual procrastination way, that was for me quite, I enjoy creative tasks, but the engineering part of my brain also likes the systematic, like, what the answer is going to be if you just work through the process. So the journal was something that I genuinely was procrastinating over. And then I had this epiphany of there's another book. Like, I could take all of the material. We have a really good website with lots of different guides and tips and advice. And I was like, let's make a physical book. Like, why have I not done that? That's just so obvious. So I used that as a distraction, but actually going on that journey and writing the book has just been so wonderful. And we've had so much positive feedback on it as well. And so I always feel like things happen for a reason. When you go off on a tangent, sometimes you have to explore those things. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're sometimes presented to us in a way that we never ever expected, didn't they? And it just shows how there's no right path, there's no one path. But from the way that I like to think about it is the skills that you gain on every part of your journey that stack up, that help you to move into the next opportunity that may come your way.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the book then. So, what was the title of the book, Caroline?
So it's called What Can I Say to Alexa?
So, tell me
And
a little bit more about it.
we've designed it like a reference guide. So it's something that you can sit next to your smart speaker. You can refer to it when you need to. Or if you want, read it cover to cover and kind of absorb that information, take what you need from it. It's got lots of ideas of things that you can try. As well as kind of being a reference guide, we wanted it to feel like we were there with you, kind of guiding you through that process and helping to build your confidence. And there are so many things that Alexa can do that is like really vital actually when it comes to someone who is at home on their own and maybe is a bit more vulnerable. There are some really useful features that people maybe don't realize are there. So things like the help feature, you can set up an emergency contact. That's really, really valuable. So we just guide people through those sorts of things. It's all the accessibility settings as well. There's some really fantastic accessibility settings which are useful in lots of different scenarios. So yeah, we just like to kind of lift the lid a little bit on things that people can try, build their confidence, and yeah, make it easier to remember, because sometimes it's not always easy to remember these things. I know that I'm the same as well. Like if it's not written down on a list, it's not happening.
Yeah, I'm very much like that as well. And there's this sense of where people just are expected to know how to use the technology. There's so much technology out there. The technology is evolving all the time, and we're only shown snippets through what we consume over media or what's presented to us through the advertising of what these tools are actually capable of. Or either we're shared information from friends or family that say, well, you can try this or do this with it. It doesn't come with an instruction book, and it's just this expectation that actually we know how to use this technology and to make the technology work for us, because the technology is a tool to enhance our lives. So why not let it enhance our lives more by understanding and learning how to make it work for us, and let it make our experiences with the technology better. Because do you get this as well when you chat to families or when you're going and supporting people? I'm not techie. Do they
Yes.
say that to you? I'm not techie.
Yes, yes. And they worry that they're going to break it, and they worry about saying something wrong and being misunderstood. And I always say to them, like, in those sorts of scenarios, a lot of the time the issue is not with you. The issue is probably with the tech. Like, for example, so coming from Scotland and having a Scottish accent, quite often the device doesn't understand what you've said and then is not able to say something helpful back to you. And then you feel like you've done something wrong, but you haven't. Mm-hmm. Like it's the technology. There's an issue there with the technology. So there is lots of barriers to access, and that's one of the big things that we try to focus on. I volunteer once a month at Alzheimer's Scotland. We do like a tech drop-in session where people can come with questions, and people will ask things like, is it listening all the time, and what happens to my data? And those are really genuine concerns, and I think it's amplified when it comes to collecting data that contains really sensitive like bioinformation, like your actual voice, your actual face. And I think people maybe with the more traditional tech don't associate that, or they don't realize how much data is being collected by taps on a screen and clicks on a mouse, and like how you navigate a website, the things that you're looking at online, how much of that data is collected to then build profiles about you. But when it comes to your voice, images of your home, that is a far more sensitive thing for people. So we like to empower people. We like to explain to them how to go into their settings, how to check what can Amazon collect, what do they do with that data? Do they use it for training? And make sure that people are aware so they can make an informed choice. It's a really difficult one because out of the box, the Amazon devices, the default setting is to collect data. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they have the power to change that.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I really feel like it would be better if they opted in rather
That's
than having
right.
to opt out. Like, you know, the way that GDPR works, like
That's right,
it's
yeah.
not quite the same in the voice context. And there are a few things like that I feel like Amazon could do a little bit better in their communication. And I think they do try, but they're such a big organization. I think it's very difficult for them to support people in the same way as we can support them.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of education coming from the big tech companies to help empower people, as you say, into how to make the technology effectively work for them and with them without compromising their personal data in that way. But it is tracking everything that we're doing, and they're unaware of that in that sense. So yeah, I like to do the exact same thing of where giving people the access to their settings and showing them how to manage those settings can really change the way that they interact with the software. Is that like a starting point for you when you work with individuals, is really understanding what their needs are and then showcasing them how they can adapt that within the settings to work with them? Or what's a process that you tend
Yeah.
to follow when you're working with people?
So we're very person led. So if it is someone who's more concerned about the data side of things, then that might be where we start. But actually, usually where we start is finding out like what is someone's hobbies, what do they love to do, what are the things that they really wished that they could enjoy a bit more again. And then we see if there's ways that we can access that either through the smart speakers or something that we can bring into the home that allows them to enjoy that independently. So that might be something really simple, like maybe they're struggling to work the TV. So can we automate some of that process of turning on the TV and really simplify that for them? Sometimes, you know, people have interests like football or, you know, other things like that. So you can show them, well, here's how you access all your favorite football updates on your smart speaker, for example. So it's always really nice to have a hook that then builds their interest, builds their confidence, and then they'll start to feel like, oh, I can see how maybe I could use it for other things as well. So yeah, I guess that's what I've seen works the best.
Do you find that there's a different behaviour set or a different usage depending on the demographic that you're working with?
That's a really interesting question because do you know what? I always feel like people surprise you.
Okay.
So, you know, when you were saying like people say, oh, I'm not techie kind of thing. I remember when we got Thomas's mum and dad and Alexa, and I wasn't really sure, you know, how they would take to it. And I think I thought that his mum would be more receptive than his dad, but actually it's his dad that that likes it more. So I'm not sure. I think it can vary really. And yeah, I'm not sure if I've seen any real demographic patterns as such. Not with the voice technologies. Well, I mean, apart from the kids, like the kids, they like all the silly things, don't they? Like, so every year Amazon publish a roundup of the most popular things that Alexa is asked. And right up there, like near the top of the list is like all things fart related.
Yeah.
Like
I've seen those videos, they're quite funny.
so yeah, in that respect, yeah, there are some differences, and I think you know, younger people, they'll probably use it in a more playful way, but then I've seen my children, you know, use it for help with their homework, help with spelling and maths and these sorts of things. So yeah, I think everyone's different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have found as well that there's a little bit of fear more for the older generation because we are still in that mindset of analog versus digital. So they'll still pick up the remote control and bang it because there's batteries in it to get it working more effectively. So they sometimes think that similar mindset of interacting with the technology in a harsh way might make it work more effectively because that's sometimes what they would have to do when they worked with more physical based technology previously. So that would involve, when I was at Apple, for example, they would tap the screen super hard
Yeah.
to interact with the technology, and having to teach a generation that actually it's just a simple tap with your finger and touching the back of their hand to help them understand that it's just a simple interaction or a soft interaction that they can have. So I do feel like there's a behavioral change that is sometimes having to share to people depending on what their experience is on technology. Have you found that that's different with voice technology, or how
Yeah,
you communicate, like the way that you speak, like your telephone voice
yeah.
versus like
I was kind of reflecting on so sometimes with people we have to coach them not to say please and thank you sometimes,
okay.
because that that can actually confuse things potentially, and that the AI on the other end, it doesn't need that to be able to do the thing that you've asked it to do. So yeah, sometimes like coaching people that they don't need to say please and thank you. I think the older generation, they're always very polite. There definitely is the thing of like the telephone voice, like putting your posh voice on. We did some really interesting research actually looking at the benefits of using the Kindspace wellbeing application. And we looked at some of the qualitative feedback, and we asked people, how do you feel about using it? And like, yeah, some of them, there were some really funny bits of feedback about how they had to put their more posh voice on. So yeah, like I said before, like a Scottish accent, unfortunately, as a lesser priority when it comes to the bigger companies like Amazon and Google, for training their models to understand that and be able to do more accurate pronunciations for us as well. But that can be a source of entertainment as well.
Yeah,
Sometimes hearing how Alexa pronounces stuff is, yeah.
it's quite funny.
Yeah.
I think this is going to change and evolve, and I'm not sure how you feel about this, but the recent release of Ring, Amazon Ring, having Scottish voices attached to it, are we going to see more of that coming out through the other Amazon-based voice devices and maybe Google? I'm hoping Apple will lead the way next year with more of its Apple Intelligence that way too. What are your thoughts around
Yeah, I
more
hope
Scottish
so.
visibility?
There was lots of excitement for when they did the auditions. So they did a tour around Scotland. They had this little pop-up booth. So we went to the shopping centre in Aberdeen, um, and did a little audition. Obviously didn't get chosen, but we were very excited, and genuinely I think these things are important. It was really funny because one of our major things that we do is putting in Ring doorbells. Like honestly, we've put in hundreds of doorbells. So yeah, it was kind of funny to imagine that maybe Thomas's voice would also be the voice on the doorbell. But yeah, no, I think it's really, really important. But also, I mean, we can't underestimate how difficult that is, because when we talk about Scottish voices, there is literally so many different variations
That's right.
depending on where you are in Scotland, and not just subtle variations, like really quite significant differences in how the words are pronounced and the cadence and all of those things. And, words that don't exist, like you go to the Western Isles and they don't use yes or no. They don't, that's not in their vocabulary. So, yeah, so it's really interesting. And what I think for me was lovely at the European chatbot last week is that there were a lot of conversations about that. So not just from a Scottish context, but in lots of other countries like India and Africa, where they have a similar thing. That the dialects can be very different, and how do we ensure that people aren't left behind by this? It has been a huge technological leap, and it's important that history and that culture isn't lost as we move into this digital voice, I guess, age.
Yeah, and we're not wanting to lose any of our history as part of it, which is why it's so important for visibility. And it is important for us all to interact and engage with these tools so that they can learn. They are only working with the data that they're given. So they'll only have biased data with the information that's out there. So can you talk a little bit more about how data is impacted by voice? You shared a little bit earlier on around the concerns that people have around sharing their personal data. But I like to think about the data in Scotland as being really required for these
Yeah.
AI tools because of the lack of web presence that is correct and authentic through the media that we have across the UK. It is slightly biased and not fully authentic. That I feel that we need to give these tools more of the data that is more local, that is more based around the history, around the culture itself, so that it can help us and support us be a better technological society in that way. What's
Yeah.
your thoughts on this, Caroline?
Yeah, and 100%, like when we're explaining about the settings and about how it all works, like we always, try and not persuade, because it's not about persuading people, but just give them that context about, actually, like if that data is only to be used for training purposes, that has benefits, maybe not immediately for you, but in the long run, collectively, it has benefits. Yeah, you've articulated that really, really well. I think there's also something really powerful about these sorts of mediums for sharing stories and history and that side of things. So we've been doing some work with an organisation down near Glasgow, actually, called the Weekday Wow Factor, and their community is so beautiful. So we're hoping that we can do more with them to help capture their unique voice and the history there, and use it as something that preserves that. So, and it's fun as well, because as a community, so they are very much about helping or supporting people in older life to stay active and to stay socially connected. So a big part of it is building those friendships and that support networks. And they have such amazing adventures. Whenever I see what they're up to, I'm like, I need to be on that bus. They have a mini bus and they go on different day trips. They have daytime discos. And honestly, I'm like, if I retire and I'm able to build, a community, have a community like that around me, I will be very happy. So yeah, I think it's looking at technology in different ways as well, isn't it? And I do feel quite excited about the potential for voice to bring people together.
Yeah, if you can imagine that these stories that are shared through groups like the Weekday Wow Factor, I know Pasna, and she does a great job of bringing the community together and to help bring society together in some sort of way through what she does. So just to say kudos to that, and I'm glad that you dropped that
Yes.
in there, Caroline, as well. So, but yeah, the stories that are shared to these tools, can you imagine maybe somebody asking the Alexa, tell me a story from somebody in Glasgow? Or can you imagine if it has that type of memory, or it's able to pull that type of information? Or
Yeah, in an authentic voice as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe can it help people with dementia, help people with Alzheimer's because they're triggered by sounds, they're triggered to by like music. Therapy is a huge
Yeah.
impact, and so is there some sort of voice therapy that can happen through these AI tools to be able to help support?
Yeah.
I don't
And
know. Have you thought anything about that? I'm just ideating at the same time as we're talking about it, Caroline. What are your thoughts?
I get to meet so many amazing entrepreneurs and innovators that are kind of working in things just like that in that space. Probably more so on the VR and the augmented reality. So you're putting on the headsets with the goggles. Alzheimer's Scotland, they've been doing some fantastic work in that space, and helping people reconnect with nature. So if it's someone who maybe grew up in a rural area and now has had to kind of move away to get further support for their health, like I'm being able to immerse them in those kinds of experiences that they would have been used to at home. So yeah, there's some really beautiful work happening in that space. I do sometimes feel like the audio is overlooked a little bit, and that a simple audio experience, a simple story can be really beautiful. On our Kindspace application, we worked with a really amazing writer to make, well, he had collated or written a collection of bedtime stories. So he called this bedtime stories for stressed out grown-ups. And the
That
stories,
sounds
they're
like
really
something I need to
simple.
listen to.
They're really simple, but they're all about human connection. They bring about those feelings of nostalgia. Yeah, so I do think I'm a big believer in keeping things simple sometimes as well. You know, tech can do so much, but I do sometimes feel like there's a bit of a bandwagon with AI at the moment where like everything is like, well, let's AIify it. And it's like, well, but why? Like sometimes the simple solutions work far better and are more impactful.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that keep it super simple method is always the best way because we overbuild, we over technify it, I think. I was talking to somebody yesterday about that all afternoon, simplifying the process, and
Yeah.
she's a CTO in the same way as well. So it's exactly the same. Let's talk a little bit about that Kindspace app that or software that you developed. Tell me a little bit more about that and the impact that it's having.
Yeah, so yeah, Kindspace, like I was saying, stemmed out of our lockdown experiences, and initially was I mean, it is a very simple idea actually. It does a little check-in with you every day. We did quite extensive research into the different aspects of well-being and how well-being is measured in terms of like how do you understand changes in well-being, and basically developed our own set of questions. So instead of it being like happy face, sad face, or you always answer the same question every day, when you come into the app, you get asked 4 questions, but they're different every time. And then over time, it builds a picture of your overall well-being. So it looks into lots of different aspects like sleep, nutrition, your relationships, your self-esteem, lots of different aspects, but you'll never get bored because the questions are different every time. And then depending on what insights come from that, we'll give you some tips from our library. So we collated together, again, similarly, a really big database with lots of different well-being pieces of information, and tried to condense it down so that it was easy to absorb that information when you listen to it. So rather than it being loads and loads and loads of information, they're just little snippets. So yeah, it gives you kind of more of a personalized experience. And then as we went on, so probably only, I don't know, 12 months after we launched, we started to add in the more kind of interactive elements where there's an audio experience that you kind of work alongside. So things like the journaling, which we mentioned, there's affirmations, there's the bedtime stories, there's some breathing exercises in there as well. So all just little simple things that don't take too much time out of your day to do. Yeah, so that's what Kindspace does.
That's my dog barking because I heard a noise. Just a moment, sorry.
Oh, yeah,
I never expected to have to bring him on, but
just give
he's
him a
got such a
cuddle.
loud voice
Hello.
and he's okay. So he's a bit confused by the noise that's outside. There's a door
Oh,
slamming. It's okay, pal. There you go. What an amazing tool that you've got there. So how do people access it then, Caroline?
yeah. So we should have probably spoken about this. Not because of my app, but just because I think people maybe don't realize that apps exist on their
Yeah,
smart
I don't
speaker
think they do at
that
all.
that aren't developed by Amazon. Anyone can develop an app actually, and the only thing that you as an individual need to know is what is the app called, and that is the magic words that you need to open it. So for Kindspace, you just say Alexa, open Kindspace, and that is you got the app. So there's no downloads, because people say to me, "Oh, where do I download it?" I'm like, "Oh, there's technically no download," but I think there's a huge advantage in that the way it works is you say the magic words, open Kindspace, that gets added to your Amazon account in the cloud, and then you can use it seamlessly across any of your Amazon devices that are connected to that same account. So if you're in a house where you've got a few different smart speakers, or maybe you've got a Kindle tablet or something like that, you can use it, and you don't have to download it individually each time.
That's
So yeah,
brilliant.
you just need to know the magic words.
And I think people confuse app with a piece of an image that they tap on when they go into their phone. They don't realise that it is reflective across the other tools that
Yeah.
they've got within their house. So
And it
I
is
like that.
confusing because in the Amazon world, they call them skills. And I
Okay.
think sometimes it's difficult for people to understand, well, what is a skill? But generally.
that
like
is very
we try to use the word,
confusing for people, right?
we try to use the word app because that is more familiar. So it is similar to how apps work on your smartphone, but you're right. They're if it's an audio only smart speaker, you won't have a title. They have come out with a new thing. So Amazon have this new thing called widgets, which is a visual version of the app, which you can have as a tile on your screen. And we've seen a lot of interest in that. I think you're able to be more creative with the things that you build. Like, so for example, one of the other things that we built fairly on was a Pomodoro timer. So like a really simple productivity timer. So you basically open it on your smart speaker and it will guide you through or keep a track of the time so you know when to take breaks and then when you need to get back onto doing your tasks. So when we added that as a widget with a visible timer, I think people really appreciate having that visual reminder as well. And that widget has been really popular, so popular that we somehow made it into the editorial top 10 pick list for a while. So that was quite exciting when I realized that when I was going through the gallery where you can kind of browse the different apps that are available, I was like, we're in the top 10. How did that happen? And actually we built that app as a learning exercise. So we had a graduate come to work with us and I wanted her to get a kind of end-to-end experience of how to bring together something like that, because the Kindspace application is quite complex. You know, there's a few different elements to it. The code is now quite involved. And so I didn't want her to feel overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, what is all this stuff? And then I also so she was through the Kickstart program, the government program that they ran a couple of years ago. So I wanted her to get some really good experience about, well, that whole design process. And so we brainstormed some ideas. She'd not long been a student and she said something like this would be so useful. And so that's what we built. And yeah, totally by accident, it's ended up really popular. But that I think illustrates what I said before about sometimes the simple ideas are the best.
Yeah, I mean, wow, what a journey. The top 10 for a tool is incredible. So well done for that. Let's talk a little bit again about the Kindspace, because I just kind of skipped over there. That as my dog was barking in the background. So apologies again for that. So the tool, do you find that you get data on the back end as well of how people are interacting with the tool, as well as the user gets data based upon their experience of interacting with the tool? Talk about that from a front end user experience and a back end experience for you. So then how does that help you develop further tools for your business?
So I'm going to like hugely embarrass myself here in that we don't have a process for analyzing any of that in any depth. We made a conscious decision at the start that it would never be about that. Like we wouldn't ever, you know, kind of capitalize on people's data. I think from a simplifying things point of view, if you don't have the data and you know, if you don't have any personalized data, you know, data that you need to, like, because it's special data, isn't it, that you need to look after, then it reduces the risk, the inherent risk, you know. Not to say, I mean, we obviously encrypt all the data. We've got all of the good cyber stuff. But yeah, we made a conscious decision that, yeah, it would never be about that. But I do also recognize that there's potentially insights in there that could be really valuable. And maybe as we grow and develop, that could be something that we would look at so that we could identify improvements. One of the things that I do regularly look at is not so much each individual user. And actually with the individual users, like, we don't collect email addresses. So we have no idea who these people are that use the app, where they are, other than what country they're in. We don't know age. We don't know any of that data. And Amazon assigns each person just a random string of letters and numbers. So in theory, we could track an individual, but how much value does that really give us? But I think potentially what is interesting for the future, and related to another project that we've done, so we have another app called My Scottish Community that we made in conjunction with the Health and Social Care Alliance. we got Innovate UK funding to do that project. And within that tool, what that tool does is it signposts people to support in their local communities related to different health and wellbeing topics. It utilises the database that the Health and Social Care Alliance have essentially crowdsourced from all the amazing third sector and kind of voluntary organisations that help to, provide different services. So, it's really, really broad in terms of the things that people can use it for. We've even heard, people using it, like if they've moved areas and they're new to the area and they want to try and find out what things are happening in their community. And that's, I think, where the data potentially gets really interesting, because if people are asking for certain things and then it turns out there isn't a service that provides that support, then that is a gap that potentially could be filled by the government or by some support from the third sector to look into whether that would be beneficial for the overall well-being of our society. So I think there's things like that when you look at it at a bigger level, that data can be really, really valuable.
Especially when it comes to improvements in healthcare, social care, all the things that I know that the governments are looking to improve on, that helps things like the NHS, that helps things about the support that they give to people within society. I think it's almost upon the tech companies themselves, not yourself, right? But the bigger tech companies to utilize the effective data that they're collecting on user experience and how the information that's been shared to help develop better ways, right? Ethical technology, ethical solutions to better support individuals rather than capitalizing it, as you mentioned there as well. So, yeah, I think there's more opportunities for anybody that's in app development or any SaaS development or looking to implement AI. Think about it from a good perspective. What's the sustainable solutions based upon that? Yeah,
absolutely. And there was so much discussion about those sorts of aspects at the European chatbot last week. And we obviously have the AI Act in the European Union, and the government here are looking at what is the most appropriate way to develop these technologies and how do they support businesses to do the right thing so that it isn't all about economic growth, but it really is about what is best for our society as well. So we had the Minister for Business do a keynote speech for us at the event last week. So Richard Lochhead spoke really eloquently about that. And we obviously have the Scottish AI Alliance as well, that I think is doing a really good job in making sure that the general public have more awareness of what even is AI and like how do I utilize it, in my own kind of day-to-day life, and all the things we talked about, in terms of data and that side of things as well. So how do we ensure our privacy and these sorts of things? So yes, lots.
Yeah, lots of good conversations, I bet, and we're still at the early stages of all of this as well. And we've got to be part of the conversation, and we've got to have these conversations around it to make sure that it is suitable for the society and the world that Scotland's going to be in, and how that differs from maybe other countries, and that being okay around that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of interesting thoughts. So before we kind of finish up today, what I ask everyone to do is kind of to share 3 tips around the topic that we've talked about. So in what way can you share 3 tips to get people to interact with voice-based technology or using technology in a way that's more empathetic, more creative, more inclusive in some sort of way? What can you share for people today?
I know you asked me about this before, and it's interesting because we've actually covered some of it already. So my absolute number 1 is like simplicity is always best, and AI has become a total bandwagon. And the amount of people that are like sticking some AI in just because they think it's better without really thinking about, well, what is the use case? What is the end goal here? How does this benefit the person, like, and the job that they're trying to do? Yeah, I mean, is it interesting because everything used to be an app, didn't it? As soon as someone had an idea, they were like, oh, I'm going to build an app. So we're in that just now where, oh, let's make an AI assistant to do that. And It's not always the right solution. So yeah, maybe have a think about, is there a simple way to do what you need to achieve, and keeping that person at the center of it, and making sure that you're not making assumptions about what their pain points are, what are the things that they struggle with, and the solution that will fit that the best. I think from a person, like an individual point of view, I completely empathize with how overwhelming it is to, even think about starting to learn a new technology, use a voice assistant. It is really overwhelming. The whole smart home space, there are so many different manufacturers, there are so many different technologies. So the way in which the devices, the sensors all talk to each other, they're the consistency is just not there. The longevity is not there. You buy something and then before you know it, there's no software updates anymore and it's obsolete and you have to scrap it and start again. And so I fully empathize with those frustrations, because I wish that it wasn't like that. Like, so for me, here's a good example. I have had my toaster for 23 years, I think. And it is perfect. It works so perfect. But all this digital electronics like barely lasts like 2 years. There is something fundamentally wrong with that. But what I would say is please don't let that put you off, because it is really important that we stay on this journey and not try and keep pace, but use the things that work for you. Find the information that you trust. So, look out maybe for people like us that can help kind of guide you to the things that we think are best in terms of an investment, because we know that people don't have deep pockets. So find, whether it's YouTube tutorials or, advice online, that's always really useful. And hopefully that will help you not be as overwhelmed and anxious about trying the new technologies. And then the last thing, which is really important for me, and I hope came across last week, so the event that we did last week, a big thing that I wanted to emphasize was how important accessibility is, and how important it is that we consider that, not just from the point of view of, including everyone, but actually fundamentally, when you properly think about that, it makes it better for everyone. So, those user experiences, and it probably goes back to my first point, about really thinking about, how do I simplify this? How do I make it as intuitive as possible? And accessibility, when you consider that, then all of those things should fall into place as well. And those little touches, they do make a huge difference. They do. So don't have accessibility as this thing of like, well, I'll do it if I've got time or resources. Like, if you do it right from the start, you'll definitely see the benefits.
Yeah, it's not a tick box exercise. It's a fundamental foundation of how you build the tech and build the tool. People forget about the user and they don't put the user at the heart of the experience. They think about the bells and whistles that have got to go onto this to make it compete with their competitor, rather than the actual user that's going to use the tool. It's the same as people that build roads, right? I'm sure you've seen pictures like this themselves.
Yeah.
They'll build a road in one direction, but actually people will walk a different way because it's more convenient for them, right? They'll see the pathway
and the
through the grass. That's right. So when we relate that into a user's experience for technology, we've got to think about the user at all times. And it's great to hear that there's people like you and your husband, Caroline, that have creating experiences like that through the tools that you've created for Alexa, and also the Kind Space and all the work that you're doing to help support your wider community and helping people interact with the technology in a fun way as well. So thank you for all the hard work that you're doing, Caroline. It's been such an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, and I know that we can talk forever about this stuff as well. So I just want to finish up by saying people can access your book directly from your website, which is tltechsmart.com/what-can-i-say-to-Alexa. So if you just look up what can I say to Alexa, and I'm sure the Google and the AI tools will bring that up to the top, or they can connect with you on LinkedIn as well, Caroline, and get that Kindspace app installed onto your Alexa devices, start interacting with the voice tools a little bit differently and learn about it more. Have fun with it. Get everybody involved in the conversation and make it work for you.
Yeah, there's so much that it can do. And yeah, sometimes I know it's not easy. The other analogy I use is your washing machine. You know, when you buy your washing machine, it's got like 30 different programs, and then like you just find the one that works. So I'm all for that as well. You know, if you want to explore a few things and then you just go back to what works, actually that's a really good place to be as well. So
yeah,
but please do explore, because you might just find something really cool that you didn't know was there.
100%. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's been great to chat to you today, and I'll keep a follow of what you're doing. Okay,
thank you.
Right, take care. Thanks.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of Digital Dominators. If your brain's buzzing and you're ready to keep that digital energy going, come join us at technologycoaching.online. It's the community for small business owners who want to get visible, take action, and grow with the right support around them. Head to technologycoaching.online. I'd love to see you there. And until next time, keep showing up, tackling your tech, and dominating your digital world.